My name is Mason Richards, 28 years old today, sitting alone in my Boston apartment scrolling through Facebook. I always knew I ranked second to my sister Rachel. But nothing prepared me for what I saw next. Photos flooded my timeline, balloons, presents, and my entire family gathered around a custom cake. Not for me. For Rachel, whose birthday is 3 weeks from now. The caption from Dad. The only one who deserves celebrating. If you like family drama that ends with sweet justice, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Trust me, this birthday changed everything. Growing up in Portland, Maine, as the older brother was supposed to come with certain privileges. First to drive, first to graduate, first to leave the nest. But in the Richards family, being firstborn meant being second place. Rachel was 2 years younger but miles ahead in our parents' eyes from the moment she was born. Linda and Raymond Richards had their perfect family plan: successful husband, devoted wife, and 2 children who would make them proud. I fulfilled part of that equation by being a boy. But Rachel completed it by being extraordinary. At least that was the family narrative. I was a solid B student throughout school. Not fantastic, not terrible. I played baseball well enough to make the team but not well enough to be a star. I had friends, went to parties, and generally had a normal high school experience. Rachel, on the other hand, was exceptional at everything she touched. Straight as without seeming to try. First chair violin. Homecoming queen. Valedictorian. Her achievements were remarkable. But what was more remarkable was how my parents treated the disparity between us. When I brought home a B+ in advanced chemistry, my dad glanced at it and said, "Could be better." When Rachel brought home all A's, there was an ice cream celebration. When I made the baseball team, my mom said, "That's nice, honey," and continued folding laundry. When Rachel won her first violin competition, they framed the certificate and took her to New York for the weekend. The pattern was established early, and only grew more pronounced as we got older. One particularly painful memory stands out from when I was 10. My birthday party had been planned for weeks, a baseball theme with friends from school and the neighborhood coming over. The night before, Rachel's dance instructor called to say she had been selected for a special recital the next day. By morning, my party was cancelled. Mom said we could reschedule, but we never did. Instead, the whole family attended Rachel's recital, and I sat in the audience while people congratulated my parents on their talented daughter. My high school graduation should have been my moment. I had worked hard to get into Boston University with a partial scholarship. As we gathered in our backyard for a small celebration, my parents presented Rachel with a brand new laptop for being accepted into the honors program at her high school. It was my graduation, but somehow it became about her accomplishment. My acceptance letter to BU warranted a clap on the back from my dad and a "Good job, son." Rachel's acceptance to the honors program got a new computer and dominated the conversation at my graduation party. College was my escape. Boston was far enough from Portland to create some distance, but close enough that I could visit if I wanted to. The truth was, I rarely wanted to. Every trip home meant sitting through dinner conversations about Rachel's latest achievements, while questions about my life were perfunctory at best. I chose computer science because I was good with technology, and because it promised financial independence. While my parents were helping Rachel with rent and expenses through her liberal arts degree, I worked part-time at the university IT department and took out modest loans. I was determined to make it on my own. After graduation, I landed a job at a tech startup in Boston. The company grew, and I grew with it. By 27, I was leading a development team and making more money than I had ever imagined possible. My parents knew about my career in the vaguest terms. Something with computers, my mom would say when family friends asked about me. She could, however, detail every audition and small part Rachel had landed in her struggling acting career in New York. Rachel followed her dream of becoming an actress, moving to New York immediately after college. What my parents presented as her independent spirit was anything but. Through an accidentally forwarded email chain 6 months ago, I discovered they had been paying the rent on her luxury Manhattan apartment for years. Rachel was barely working a commercial here, an extra role there, but living as though she was a successful actress, courtesy of our parents. I had tried to address the favoritism several times over the years. When I was 16, I asked my mom directly why Rachel's achievements seemed more important than mine. "Don't be ridiculous, Mason," she said. "We're proud of both of you. Rachel just needs more encouragement because she's more sensitive." When I was 22 and home for Thanksgiving, I pointed out that they had attended Rachel's college parents' weekend but had skipped mine for all 4 years. "You know how to take care of yourself," Dad said, as if independence was a punishment rather than a strength. By 25, I had stopped trying. I called on holidays, sent appropriate gifts for birthdays and anniversaries, and kept conversations surface level. I built a life in Boston with friends who valued me. My boss, Mr. Collins, became something of a mentor, recognizing potential in me that my parents never had. I dated occasionally, but nothing serious stuck, partly because I had trouble believing anyone could choose me first when my own family never had. And then came my 28th birthday, when everything I had quietly accepted for years suddenly became intolerable. My 28th birthday started like any ordinary Thursday. I woke up at 6:30, made coffee, and logged into my home workstation. Our company had a flexible remote work policy, and I had decided to work from home on my birthday. Not because I was planning a celebration, there wasn't one, but because birthdays always carried a weight of expectation and inevitable disappointment. By 9 a.m., I had received birthday texts from 3 friends and my ex-girlfriend Sarah, but nothing from my family. This wasn't unusual. Most years, my mom would remember to call by evening, apologizing for the late acknowledgement. My dad might send a text if prompted by mom. Rachel occasionally remembered on her own, but more often after being reminded by our parents. Last year on my 27th birthday, I had invited them to Boston for dinner. My mom said they couldn't make it because my dad had an important golf game. I later saw on Facebook that they had actually gone to New York that weekend to see Rachel in a 3-line role in an off-Broadway production. Around noon, I took a break to make a sandwich and check social media. That's when I saw them a series of photos posted just an hour earlier by my cousin Katie. The first showed my parents' living room decorated with balloons and streamers. The second was a close-up of an elaborate cake with "Our Shining Star" written in icing. The third showed my entire extended family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins gathered around Rachel, who was beaming in the center. I stared at my screen, a cold feeling spreading through my chest. My first thought was that I had somehow forgotten Rachel's birthday, but no, her birthday was April 18th, 3 weeks after mine. This was March 28th. My birthday. I scrolled through more photos. Everyone was there, even my grandmother, who had claimed she was too ill to travel when I invited her to my college graduation. My Uncle Peter, who lived in California. My cousins from both sides of the family. Then I saw the banner in the background of one photo. "Congratulations, Rachel!" beneath the photos. My father had commented, "Celebrating our amazing daughter. The only one who deserves celebrating." I set my sandwich down, no longer hungry. They had gathered the entire family. Not for my birthday, which was today, but for a surprise party for Rachel to celebrate her landing a small recurring role on a cable TV show. On my birthday. Which they had apparently forgotten entirely. I scrolled through the comments. Relatives praising Rachel's talent and persistence. Friends of the family congratulating my parents on raising such a gifted daughter. No one, not one person, mentioned that today was my birthday. I felt a strange sense of calm descend over me. This wasn't a new hurt. It was just the most blatant example of a lifetime pattern. Part of me wanted to close the laptop, ignore it as I had ignored so many smaller slights over the years. Another part wanted to post a sarcastic comment reminding everyone what day it was. The rational side of me knew either response would change anything. Instead, I studied the cake photo again. It was professional quality, with fondant decorations and piped icing flowers. My mother had ordered a grocery store sheet cake for my 18th birthday and nothing at all for most birthdays since I'd become an adult. After several minutes of deliberation, I typed the most neutral comment I could muster. Nice cake. I returned to work, burying myself in code for the next few hours. When I checked Facebook again around 4 p.m., I saw my mother had replied to my comment. At least someone's worth baking for. I stared at those words, reading them over and over. They could have been interpreted as a joke. Except I knew my mother. There was no humor in that statement, only the naked truth of how she felt. I was not worth baking for. I was not worth celebrating. I was not worth remembering. Something inside me shifted. Not broke, I think it had been broken for years. This was different. This was clarity. This was the final confirmation of what I had always known but tried to deny. I smiled, though there was no one there to see it. A strange, calm smile as the last illusion fell away. Then I typed my reply. Enjoy it. While you can. My phone rang almost immediately. Not my parents or Rachel, but Dylan Wright, my best friend from high school who now lived in Chicago. Happy birthday, man, he said when I answered. You remembered, I said, and was embarrassed to hear my voice catch. Course I remembered. We've been celebrating your birthday since we were 7. What's going on? You sound off. I told him about the Facebook photos. My comment, my mother's reply. Dude, Dylan said when I finished. That's cold. Even for your mom. Yeah. What did you mean by your reply? Enjoy it while you can? I don't know, I said. But that wasn't entirely true. Something was forming in my mind, not yet fully shaped but with clear intent. I think I'm just done. Done with what? The whole charade. Pretending we're a normal family with normal parent-child relationships. Pretending I matter to them at all. You want to cut them off? Dylan asked. Maybe. Or maybe something else. I need to think. After talking with Dylan, I closed my laptop and poured myself a drink. It was my birthday after all. As I sipped my whiskey, I found myself mentally reviewing what I knew about Rachel's situation in New York. That evening, I sat in my darkened apartment with a glass of whiskey, contemplating how 30 years of family dynamics had led to this moment. The anger that had simmered all afternoon was crystallizing into something more focused. I wasn't just hurt. I was tired of the pattern. Tired of being the reliable son who got nothing while Rachel remained the perpetual child who got everything. I opened my laptop again and pulled up the email that had accidentally exposed my parents' financial arrangement with Rachel. 6 months ago. My dad had mistakenly copied me on an email thread with their financial advisor. They were transferring another $30,000 to an account earmarked for Rachel's New York expenses. The thread revealed they had been covering her $4,200 monthly rent for a luxury one-bedroom in Chelsea, plus giving her a monthly allowance of $2,000 for incidentals. Rachel was 26 years old and had never paid her own rent. Never worried about bills. Never had to take a job she didn't want just to make ends meet. While I had worked through college, taken on student loans, and lived with 3 roommates in a cramped apartment until I could afford my own place, Rachel had been given everything. And what had all that support created? A 26-year-old who still behaved like a teenager, who called our parents crying when a casting didn't go her way, who expected the world to recognize her special talents, without putting in the work that real success requires. I thought about my own journey. The nights studying while working part-time. The entry-level coding job with the long hours and modest pay. The promotions I'd earned through consistent performance. The respect I'd gained from colleagues who valued reliability and results. I hadn't been handed anything, and it had made me stronger, more capable, more resilient. What if Rachel's problem wasn't that she was more talented or more deserving, but that she had never been allowed to develop that same resilience? What if my parents' constant intervention had actually stunted her growth rather than nurtured it? I pulled up the rental agreement for my own apartment that I kept in my digital files. Then I searched for information about rental laws in New York. An idea was taking shape, not born from vengeance, but from a strange sort of clarity. Around midnight, I found myself researching Rachel's building in Chelsea. It was owned by a real estate company called Harrington Properties, managed by a Mr. Gerald Harrington. Their website listed several luxury buildings across Manhattan, all catering to young professionals with more money than sense, or in Rachel's case, with parents willing to foot the bill. I looked up property management companies in New York and found several that specialized in managing rental units for absentee owners. I made notes, comparing services and fees. Then I checked my investment accounts. Thanks to joining my tech company early and receiving equity as part of my compensation, plus careful saving and investing, I had accumulated a substantial portfolio. More than enough for what I was considering. What I was contemplating wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about hurting Rachel. It was about removing the safety net that had prevented both Rachel and my parents from facing reality. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to stop protecting them from the consequences of their choices. I considered the potential fallout. My parents would be furious. Rachel would be shocked, then angry. There would be accusations, recriminations, possibly even threats. Was I prepared for that? Was it worth it? I thought about my mother's words. At least someone's worth baking for. Years of similar comments flashed through my mind. The cancelled birthday party. The overlooked graduation. The constant comparison in which I always came up lacking. Yes, I decided. It was worth it. I spent the next hour creating a detailed plan. I would need to make one substantial financial transfer. I would need to send 2 carefully worded emails. And then I would need to wait. As I finally went to bed around 2 a.m., I felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't reacting to my family's behavior with hurt or resignation. I was taking control of the narrative. Setting boundaries that should have been set years ago. My 28th birthday might have started with a painful reminder of my place in my family's hierarchy, but it was ending with a resolution that would change that dynamic forever. The next morning, I woke with clear purpose. I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years, then made a series of phone calls. First to my financial advisor to arrange for liquidating some investments. Then to a real estate attorney to ensure what I planned was legal. It was. By noon, the pieces were in place. I initiated a wire transfer for a substantial sum, enough to buy out Rachel's lease for the coming year plus a premium to make it worth the landlord's while. Then I composed 2 emails. The first went to Mr. Gerald Harrington. Dear Mr. Harrington, I am writing regarding apartment 14B at the Chelsea Grand, currently leased to Rachel Richards. I would like to propose purchasing the remainder of her lease, plus an additional year, under the following conditions. The second went to Manhattan Property Management Services. I am looking for a company to manage a property in Chelsea. The current tenant should remain in place, but I have specific requirements regarding rent collection and lease terms going forward. I was careful to keep everything professional and legal. This wasn't about evicting Rachel or causing her genuine hardship. It was about removing the invisible support system that had prevented her from growing up. Before hitting send on either email, I paused. Was I crossing a line? Was this too extreme a response to years of favoritism? I thought again about that Facebook post. The only one who deserves celebrating. About my mother's comment. At least someone's worth baking for. No, this wasn't too extreme. This was long overdue. I sent the emails, then closed my laptop. What would happen next was out of my hands. I had set events in motion that couldn't be easily undone. Now all I could do was wait. The next few days passed in a strange limbo. I returned to work, diving into coding projects with unusual intensity. My boss, Mr. Collins, noticed my focus during our weekly one-on-one meeting. "You seem particularly motivated this week, Mason," he said, leaning back in his chair. "That new authentication system is coming along faster than projected." "Just in the zone, I guess," I replied, not mentioning my birthday or what had followed. "Well, whatever's driving you, keep it up. The executive team is noticing." He paused. "Everything okay otherwise? You seem different somehow." I considered telling him. Mr. Collins had been more of a mentor to me than my own father ever was. But I wasn't ready to share this with anyone except Dylan. "I'm good. Just some personal stuff sorting itself out." He nodded, respecting my privacy. "Doors always open if you need to talk." By day 5, I received confirmation from Mr. Harrington that he had accepted my offer. The lease transfer would be processed, and all terms would be kept confidential as requested. Manhattan Property Management Services had also agreed to take on the management of the apartment under my specified conditions. I marked the date on my calendar, April 9th, 12 days after my birthday. The day Rachel would learn that her rent situation had changed. I hadn't heard from my family since the Facebook incident. No belated birthday wishes. No acknowledgement of my comments. Just silence. In previous years, I might have broken first, calling my mother or sending a neutral text to keep the peace. Not this time. On day 7, my friend Jared insisted on taking me out for a belated birthday dinner. We went to our favorite steakhouse in Back Bay, and after a few drinks, I found myself telling him about the situation. "So let me get this straight," Jared said, cutting into his ribeye. "You bought your sister's apartment lease without telling her or your parents?" "Basically, yes." "And what happens on April 9th exactly?" "Her landlord will inform her that her rent situation has changed. That she no longer needs to make payments to Harrington Properties. And she'll freak out thinking she's being evicted?" "Possibly initially. But then she'll learn that the lease has been transferred and is being managed by a new company. Which is actually you. Which is a property management company working for me, yes." Jared whistled. "That's either the most vindictive or most generous thing I've ever heard, and I can't decide which." "It's either," I said. "I'm not evicting her. I'm not even charging her rent, technically. I'm just removing our parents from the equation. But you're going to tell her it's you behind it, right?" "Eventually. When the time is right." Jared shook his head. "I don't know, man. This seems like it could backfire spectacularly. What if your parents just start sending her money directly instead of paying her rent?" "They might. But that would require Rachel to manage her own finances, which she's never had to do. Besides, I have a condition in the new arrangement that any direct payment of rent by third parties violates the lease terms." "You've thought of everything." "I've had a lifetime to think about it." Jared studied me for a moment. "Just be careful. Family stuff has a way of getting messier than you expect." "It's already messy," I said. "Has been for years. I'm just finally doing something about it." As day 12 approached, I found myself checking my phone more frequently, anticipating the call that would surely come. I worked from home that day, unable to concentrate in the office. By afternoon, I was pacing my apartment, rehearsing what I would say when Rachel called. At 2:17 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "What the hell is going on? Mr. Harrington just called about my apartment. Call me immediately." I didn't call. Instead, I waited. 3 minutes later, another text. "Mason, I'm serious, this is an emergency. My landlord says I don't need to pay rent anymore. Am I being evicted? Call me." I still didn't call. At 2:26 p.m., my phone rang. Rachel's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered, "What the hell is going on with my apartment?" Rachel's voice was shrill, panic evident in every syllable. "Hello to you too, Rachel," I said calmly. "What seems to be the problem?" "Don't play dumb, Mason. Mr. Harrington just called me. He said my rent has been taken care of and that I should expect communication from a new management company. Am I being evicted? Did Mom and Dad stop paying my rent because of some fight I don't know about?" I sat down on my couch, surprisingly steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "You're not being evicted." "Then what's happening?" Mr. Harrington was being super weird and cryptic. He said the lease has been transferred but wouldn't tell me to whom or why. "The lease has been transferred," I confirmed. "To me." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "What?" "I purchased the remainder of your lease, plus an additional year. It's being managed by a company that works for me now." "You what?" "Why would you? How could you afford?" "What is happening right now?" Her voice shifted from panic to confusion. "I make good money, Rachel. Have for years. Not that you or Mom and Dad ever asked much about my career. This doesn't make any sense. Why would you buy my lease?" "I thought it was time for a change in our family dynamic." "What are you talking about? Is this about that stupid Facebook thing? Are you seriously this petty over a surprise party?" "It wasn't about the party, Rachel. It was never about the party. It was about Dad's comment that you're the only one who deserves celebrating. It was about Mom saying I'm not worth baking for. It was about 30 years of being treated like I matter less than you. That's ridiculous. They don't treat you differently. They paid your rent for 6 years without ever telling me. They give you a monthly allowance like you're still in college. Meanwhile, I worked through school, took out loans, and built my career without any help from them. That's different. I'm pursuing an artistic career. You have a stable tech job. A job I got through hard work and perseverance, not because anyone handed it to me." Rachel was quiet for a moment. "So what happens now? Are you evicting me to get back at Mom and Dad?" "No. Like I said, I've paid your lease for the coming year. You can stay in the apartment." "Then what's the catch?" "No catch. But no parental bailout either. You're 26, Rachel. It's time you learned to manage your own finances like an adult." "You self-righteous ass," she exploded. "You had no right to interfere in my life like this." "Maybe not. But no one seemed to care about interfering in my life. My birthday, for instance. Is that what this is about? Your birthday?" "Grow up, Mason." I laughed, the irony too rich. "That's exactly what this is about. All of us growing up. Including you." My phone beeped with another call coming in. My parents. "I think Mom and Dad are calling. Should I add them to this conversation?" "I already texted them. They're furious with you." "I'm sure they are." I accepted the incoming call, merging it with Rachel's. "Hello, Mom. Dad. I assume Rachel has filled you in? Mason Andrew Richards." My mother's voice was tight with anger. "What do you think you're doing?" "Making a long overdue point. By humiliating your sister?" My father cut in. "By going behind our backs. This is absolutely unacceptable." "Was it acceptable to throw her a surprise party on my birthday without even calling me? Was it acceptable to tell the world that she's the only one who deserves celebrating?" "Don't be so sensitive," my mother said dismissively. "It was just a Facebook comment. And telling me I'm not worth baking for? Was that just a comment too?" There was a pause. "I didn't say that. It's right there on Facebook, Mom. In writing. For everyone to see. You're taking it out of context." "What's the correct context for telling your son he's not worth basic parental affection?" "This is ridiculous," my father interjected. "Whatever grievances you think you have don't justify interfering with your sister's living situation. You will undo this immediately." "Actually, I won't. The contracts are signed." The money has been transferred. It's done. Then we'll just send Rachel the rent money directly. My mother said. You could do that. I agreed. But the new lease terms specifically prohibit third-party payment of rent. If discovered, it would constitute a violation of the lease. You can't be serious. My father sputtered. Completely serious. Look, I'm not trying to hurt Rachel. I've ensured she has a place to live for the next year. I'm just removing the safety net that's prevented her from growing up. I am grown up. Rachel protested. Adults pay their own bills. I countered. Adults don't need their parents to subsidize their lifestyle indefinitely while they chase dreams with no backup plan. You've always been jealous of my talent, Rachel said bitterly. This isn't about talent, Rachel. It's about accountability. Something neither you nor our parents seem to understand. We understand that family supports each other, my mother said coldly. Something you clearly don't grasp. Support isn't the same as enabling. I learned that distinction on my own because you never supported me. You just expected me to figure it out. And guess what? I did. Now Rachel can too. Another call beeped in. Rachel's boyfriend Trevor. Is that Trevor calling you, Rachel? Maybe add him to this family discussion. Fine, she snapped. And a moment later, Trevor's voice joined the conversation. What's going on? Rachel texted something about the apartment? He sounded confused but not panicked. Rachel launched into a tearful explanation, emphasizing how I had interfered and manipulated her living situation to get revenge for perceived childhood slights. When she finished, Trevor was quiet for a moment. So let me get this straight. Your brother bought your lease so you can stay in the apartment, but your parents can't pay for it anymore? Yes. It's completely underhanded and manipulative. But you're not being evicted? No, but... And you can still stay there if you pay the rent yourself? Or find roommates, yes. But that's not the point. Trevor's tone changed slightly. Actually, I think that might be exactly the point. We've talked about this, Rachel. About building your own life independent of your parents. You're taking his side? Rachel sounded betrayed. I'm not taking sides. But I've been telling you for 2 years that it's weird your parents pay for everything. Most actors I know have roommates and side jobs. It's part of the journey. This isn't about my career. It's about Mason deliberately trying to hurt me. Is that true? Trevor directed the question to me. Are you trying to hurt Rachel? No, I said honestly. I'm trying to help her become self-sufficient. Something our parents have actively prevented. By blindsiding her? My father challenged. Would you have listened if I'd tried to discuss it directly? When have you ever taken my concerns seriously? The silence that followed was answer enough. Look, Trevor said, his voice reasonable. This doesn't have to be a catastrophe. Rachel, we've talked about moving in together. This might be the push we needed. You want to use this situation to pressure me into moving in with you? Rachel sounded incredulous. Not pressure you. But we've been dating for 3 years. It makes financial sense. And frankly, I agree with your brother that it's time you had some financial independence from your parents. I hadn't expected an ally in Trevor. From Rachel's stunned silence, neither had she. Trevor, this is a family matter, my mother said stiffly. With respect, Mrs. Richards, Rachel and I are building a life together. That makes it my business too. For the first time in the conversation, no one seemed to know what to say next. Rachel, I finally said. I meant what I said. You can stay in the apartment for the next year. The lease is paid. What you do with that time is up to you. Find roommates. Move in with Trevor. Get a steady job to supplement your acting. Whatever you decide, it will be your decision as an adult. Not as someone's perpetual child. This conversation is over. My father declared. Mason, you will hear from our lawyer. About what, exactly? I've broken no laws. I've violated no agreements. I've simply made a private real estate transaction. We'll see about that, he said, but the bluster in his voice had an uncertain edge. I think we're done here, I agreed. Rachel, you'll be receiving information from the new management company soon. Everything else is up to you. I ended the call before anyone could respond, then turned off my phone entirely. My hands were shaking slightly, but not from fear. From a strange combination of adrenaline and relief. For the first time in my adult life, I had stood my ground with my family without backing down. Without seeking approval, without trying to keep the peace at my own expense. Whatever happened next, something fundamental had changed. Not just in my family's dynamic, but in me. The first month after what I came to think of as the intervention was predictably turbulent. My parents alternated between icy silence and explosive accusations. They did consult a lawyer, who apparently informed them that I had done nothing legally actionable. This only fueled their indignation. Just because something is legal doesn't make it right, my mother said in one of her terse voicemails. I didn't call back. Rachel's response evolved in interesting ways. The initial fury gave way to panic as she confronted her financial reality for the first time. She called me repeatedly during week 2, alternating between tearful pleas and bitter recriminations. I maintained a consistent message. This wasn't about punishment but about necessary growth. By week 3, something shifted. She texted me on a Tuesday evening. Found 2 roommates. Both actresses. Moving their stuff in this weekend. Still think what you did was manipulative, but I'm handling it. It was the closest thing to accountability I'd ever heard from my sister. I replied simply, good for you. I mean that. I hadn't told many people about what I'd done, but those who knew noticed changes in me. My friend Dylan called it standing in my power. My therapist, Dr. Green, yes, I had started therapy after the Facebook incident, called it establishing healthy boundaries. Whatever it was called, it felt right. For too long, I had been the family peacekeeper, swallowing hurts and resentments to maintain a harmony that existed only on the surface. Growing up, whenever Rachel and I fought, I was the one expected to apologize, regardless of who had started it. You're older, my mother would say. You should know better. I did know better now. I knew that genuine relationships couldn't be built on such a fundamental imbalance. I knew that by always giving in, I had taught my family that my feelings didn't matter. I knew that real love involved accountability, not just accommodation. Dr. Green helped me see how these family patterns had affected other areas of my life. My tendency to overwork to prove my worth. My hesitation to assert myself in relationships. My fear that setting boundaries meant losing love. What have you learned from this experience? She asked during one session. That I can survive their disapproval, I said after reflecting. That their anger doesn't diminish me. And what about your relationship with Rachel? I don't know yet. But whatever happens, it will be more honest than before. At work, my newfound assertiveness translated into unexpected opportunities. When a senior developer position opened up, I applied without the self-doubt that would have held me back before. Mr. Collins later told me my confidence in the interview had been the deciding factor. You've always had the technical skills, he said. But now you have the presence to match. Exactly 1 month after the intervention, I received another text from Rachel. This one surprised me. Got a call back for a recurring role on that police procedural that films in NYC. The assistant director is friends with one of my new roommates. Having to work part-time at the coffee shop hasn't been fun, but the connections there are actually proving useful. Who knew? I smiled at my phone. Congratulations. That's genuinely great news. This doesn't mean I forgive you, she added immediately. I know. Not asking for forgiveness. Just happy for your success. Mom and Dad are still furious with you, I figured. There was a long pause before her next message appeared. But I might be starting to understand why you did it. It was a small acknowledgement, but it felt significant. My parents were indeed still furious. My father sent a formal-sounding email declaring that I was no longer welcome at family gatherings until I made amends by reinstating their financial arrangement with Rachel. My mother left voicemails alternating between guilt trips and angry accusations. I didn't respond to either approach, maintaining the boundaries I had established. It was painful, yes. There were nights I lay awake questioning whether I had gone too far, whether the price of this stand was worth it. But then I would remember all the birthdays, graduations, and achievements that had gone unacknowledged. All the times my feelings had been dismissed. All the years I had accepted less than I deserved. 6 weeks after the intervention, Sarah, my ex-girlfriend, reached out. We had maintained a cordial friendship since our breakup 2 years earlier, which had been amicable if somewhat ambiguous. She suggested dinner. To catch up. Over pasta at our once-favorite Italian restaurant, she studied me with curious eyes. You seem different. More. I don't know. Present. I told her about the birthday, the Facebook posts, and what followed. She listened without interrupting, twirling pasta around her fork thoughtfully. I always thought you let your family walk all over you, she said when I finished. It was one of the things that frustrated me when we were together. You'd come back from Portland so deflated, but you'd never do anything about it. I know. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. I'm saying I like this version of you. The one who stands up for himself. We ended up dating again. This time, it felt different. I was different. More secure in myself. More willing to express my needs, more able to be fully present rather than constantly seeking external validation. When Thanksgiving approached, my parents issued a conditional invitation through my aunt. I could join the family gathering if I agreed not to create tension by mentioning the apartment situation. It was their way of regaining control, of sweeping fundamental issues under the rug in service of a pretend harmony. The old Mason would have accepted these terms, grateful for any form of inclusion. The new Mason declined politely, choosing instead to host a Friendsgiving with Dylan, Jared, Sarah, and other friends who valued me for who I was. Not for my willingness to accept scraps of affection. It was the best Thanksgiving I'd ever had. In early December, nearly 3 months after the intervention, Rachel called me directly. Not to argue or accuse, but to talk. Trevor and I are moving in together after the new year, she said. It makes financial sense, and honestly, I think we're ready. That's great, Rachel. I'm happy for you both. Yeah, well, it's weird. Ever since I've had to manage my own finances, I've been booking more roles. My acting coach says my performances have more authenticity now. Something about real-life struggle informing the work. She paused. I still think you could have found a less dramatic way to make your point. Would you have listened? She sighed. Probably not. None of us did. Ever. It was the most honest conversation we'd had in our adult lives. How are Mom and Dad? I asked, though I suspected I knew. Still mad. Still convinced you're the villain in this story. But I've started pushing back a little when they go on their rants about you. Told them last week that maybe they should reflect on why you felt you had to do something so extreme to be heard. How did that go over? About as well as you'd expect. But it needed to be said. She hesitated. I've been thinking a lot about our childhood. About how different the rules were for us. I didn't see it then. Or maybe I didn't want to see it because it benefited me. It wasn't your fault, Rachel. You were a kid too. Maybe. But I'm not a kid anymore. None of us are. She took a breath. Anyway, I should go. Just wanted to update you on the apartment situation since technically you're my landlord. Most hands-off landlord ever. I joked. She laughed. A genuine sound I hadn't heard directed at me in years. True. Thanks for that, at least. After we hung up, I sat looking out my apartment window at the Boston skyline. reflecting on how much had changed in 3 months. I had lost the illusion of a supportive family, but gained something more valuable: self-respect, clearer boundaries, and perhaps the beginning of a more honest relationship with my sister. Sometimes breaking patterns requires breaking hearts, including your own. But in that breaking, there's the possibility of something healthier taking root and growing. 6 months after my 28th birthday, my life had transformed in ways I could never have anticipated. The immediate upheaval had settled into a new normal that, while not perfect, felt more authentic than the family dynamic I had accepted for decades. Rachel had moved in with Trevor and sublet the Chelsea apartment to her 2 roommates. She had landed the recurring role on the police procedural, which, while not a starring part, provided steady income and exposure. More significantly, she had secured these opportunities through her own network and talent, not through parental intervention. We had begun having monthly video calls, just the 2 of us, no parents involved. During our most recent conversation, she said something that stayed with me. "I resented you for months after what you did," she admitted, curled up on her couch with a mug of tea. "But now I'm almost grateful?" "That sounds weird." "It does," I agreed with a small smile. "But it's true. I never realized how infantilized I was until I had to stand on my own. Mom and Dad meant well, but they weren't actually helping me. They were keeping me dependent." That was my point, albeit dramatically made. "Super dramatic," she agreed, rolling her eyes. "But effective. I've booked 3 roles in the past 4 months. Before, I'd be lucky to get 1 small part in 6 months. My acting coach says there's a new authenticity to my performances. Real life experience will do that." She nodded thoughtfully. "I've also started setting boundaries with Mom and Dad. It's not easy." "Tell me about it." "I told them I don't want to hear them badmouth you anymore. That if they want to repair things with you, they need to acknowledge how they've treated you all these years." I raised my eyebrows, genuinely surprised. "How did that go over?" "About as well as you'd expect." Dad stormed off. Mom cried. But I held my ground. She smiled, a hint of pride in her expression. "I learned that from my big brother." The following week, Rachel suggested we meet in person. She had a 2-day shoot in Boston for her show and suggested coffee afterward. We met at a cafe near the public garden. The awkwardness of our new relationship evident in our careful greeting, not quite a hug, more than a handshake. "You look good," she said as we sat with our drinks. "Happy. I am mostly." "You too. Working regularly helps. So does having an actual adult relationship with Trevor instead of playing house on Mom and Dad's dime." We talked about her role, my recent promotion, her new independence, my rekindled relationship with Sarah. It wasn't the easy conversation of close siblings, but it wasn't the performative interaction of strangers either. It was something new. Something we were building from scratch. As we were about to leave, Rachel handed me a small package. "It's 6 months late, but happy birthday." Inside was a framed photo of us as children. Maybe 5 and 7 years old, arms around each other, grinning with the unself-conscious joy of kids who haven't yet learned to perform for parental approval. I didn't remember the photo or the moment it captured, but something about our genuine smiles made my throat tighten. "Thank you," I said, meaning it. "I found it when I was packing to move in with Trevor. Made me remember there was a time before all the competition." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "Anyway," she continued, fidgeting with her coffee cup, "I should go. Early call time tomorrow. But this was nice. We should do it again sometime." "I'd like that," I said. My parents eventually reached out, though not with the acknowledgement or apology I might have hoped for. My mother called first, her approach a mixture of olive branch and willful ignorance. "We miss you, Mason," she said, her voice carefully modulated. "The family isn't the same without you." "I miss aspects of it too," I replied honestly. Can't we put this unpleasantness behind us? Your father and I are willing to move forward if you are. Moving forward requires acknowledging what happened, Mom. Not just the apartment situation, but the years of favoritism and dismissal that led to it. She sighed. Must you be so dramatic? Parents do their best. We never meant to make you feel less important. Impact matters more than intent. And this isn't about one incident. It's about a lifetime of moments that taught me my worth in our family. The conversation ended in a stalemate. But it was a beginning. My father called a week later, his approach more direct. Your mother's upset about your conversation, he started. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? Because it seems like upsetting your family has become your new hobby. I almost laughed at the irony. That's an interesting perspective, Dad. Especially given that none of you remembered my birthday, threw a party for Rachel instead, and publicly declared she was the only one worth celebrating. His silence told me he hadn't expected me to be so direct. Look, I continued, I'm not trying to punish anyone. I'm trying to establish a relationship based on mutual respect rather than established roles where my feelings don't matter. Of course your feelings matter, he said, but the words sounded hollow. Rehearsed. They should. But they haven't. Not for a long time. Another silence, longer this time. Your mother found a small gift for you. Something she picked up months ago for your birthday, but things got complicated. Could we send it to you? It wasn't an apology, but it was an acknowledgement. A small one, but real. Yes, I said. That would be nice. The package arrived a few days later. Inside was a leather portfolio embossed with my initials. Not a thoughtless gift, but one selected with some consideration of my professional life. With it was a card signed by both parents, containing the simple message. We're proud of your success. It wasn't everything, but it was something. A crack in the wall of denial they had built. As my 29th birthday approached, I decided to host a dinner at my apartment. Not a big party, just a small gathering of people who had supported me through the past year's transformation. Sarah, Dylan, flying in from Chicago, Jared, my boss Mr. Collins and his wife, and a few other close friends. I also invited Rachel, who accepted immediately, and my parents, who after some deliberation agreed to come. The dinner wasn't perfect. There were awkward moments, old tensions that surfaced in subtle ways. But there were good moments too. My father asking genuine questions about my work. My mother bringing a homemade cake. Rachel and Sarah discovering a shared interest in independent film. After everyone else had left, my parents lingered. My mother helped clean up while my father examined the view from my apartment window. You've done well for yourself, son, he said, the words clearly difficult for him. Thank you, Dad. We may not have shown it properly, but we do love you. Both of you. I know. But love needs to be demonstrated, not just declared. He nodded slowly. We're trying to learn that. Better late than never, I suppose? It wasn't the emotional reconciliation scene from a movie. There were no tearful embraces or profound admissions. Just small steps toward a more honest relationship. Later that night, after they'd gone, Sarah wrapped her arms around me. You okay? Yeah, I said, surprising myself with how true it felt. I am. Looking back on the events that began with that Facebook post on my 28th birthday, I realized something important. Setting boundaries isn't about punishment. It's about creating space for healthier relationships to develop. By refusing to participate in the family dynamic that had diminished me for years, I had actually given all of us the opportunity to grow. Rachel had found strength and authenticity she didn't know she possessed. My parents had begun, however reluctantly, to examine their parenting patterns. And I had discovered that my worth wasn't determined by their validation but by my own self-respect and the genuine connections I built with people who valued me for who I was. Not every broken relationship can be repaired. Not every family dynamic can be transformed. but by standing in my truth and refusing to accept less than I deserved. I had created the possibility for something better not just for me, but for all of us. So if you're watching this and recognizing your own family patterns in my story, know that you deserve to be celebrated too. You deserve to have your boundaries respected. You deserve relationships that lift you up rather than diminish you. Sometimes the bravest, kindest thing you can do for yourself and for those who undervalue you is to say, enough. Has anyone else had to make a difficult stand with family to change an unhealthy dynamic? What happened? Did things improve or did you have to maintain distance? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about setting boundaries and finding self-worth. Remember, sometimes the most powerful words in the English language are simply, no. Not anymore. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to stand in your truth, whatever that looks like for you.